all the participants. And I have a great pleasure and honor to welcome our great speaker, Dr. Y.S. Rajan. I heard him many number of times. And if you any younger generation listening first time, you never miss his talk wherever you get his name. And I have a great pleasure to welcome you, sir. And thank you for accepting our invitation to address us. And as you know, and our Chandrashekar, Dr. Chandrashekar sir also agreed to address. And the first time the two speakers are addressing Dr. Chandrashekar and Vice Rajan on the Satish Dhawan Commemoration Lecture. And I take this opportunity to welcome Chandrashekar sir and also Vice Rajan once again. I have a great pleasure to welcome Dr. P.N. Tengli. He is my senior and guru, and he is a professor in director, ex-director of in DRDO. He is a convener of this program. I have a great pleasure to welcome again Dr. Bino Prince. He is another convener of this program and for accepting to be conveners and conducting the program. I have another Padma Shri Vasagam sir and ex-chairman of our Karnataka State Center, Dr. V. Jayaraman, new committee, elected committee members, and all our committee members, council members, and all the people who joined this Professor Satish Dhawan Commemoration Lecture. Again, I take this opportunity to welcome you all on behalf of the Karnataka State Center and the Institution of Engineers, Minute. We are one of the largest and oldest professional body serving the country in engineering needs in 15 branches. Karnataka State Center with the 20,000 corporate members, with the 9 local centers, with the 15 division branches. So if anybody has not become a member of our Institution of Engineering organization, we welcome, and we are the cheapest membership fees on earth, 5,000 for life. I don't think any organization in the world give you 5,000 rupees a life membership for any of the professional engineers there. And with this brief, again, I welcome you all, and I request our the next agenda professor, our professor and Dr. P.N. Tengli to speak about the program, and go ahead, sir. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Whether I am audible, Dr. Rangareddy?
Very good.
Okay. So thank you, Dr. Rangareddy, for giving opportunity for today's program. And thanks to all dignitaries today who are present for this particular program. And I would like to say about the Satish Dhawan commemoration lecture that is organized today. So Professor Satish Dhawan was a multifaceted personality. He was truly one of the most distinguished Indians of our times, a brilliant aeronautical engineer, an outstanding space scientist, a philosopher, a humanist, and above all, a great visionary. So that is really that made all of us to come to this level. That was the drive. So his vision was great, and we are progressing in that direction. And his genuine concern for people led him to be an unwavering friend of the poor. So that is also very important. So the underprivileged and the deprived. So he used to look into them also. So that is one of the very noble nature that he was having. He took special care to protect the interest of tribals when the Sriharikota launch facility was established without compromising the advancement of science and technology. So he looked into all facets of this particular society. So he wanted science and technology to benefit the society. He stood for the peaceful application of space and technology. Professor Dhawan was the longest serving director of Indian Institute of Science for 19 years. That is 1962 to 1981. And during this period, he brought IISc to a world-class institution. Since India's poor live largely in its villages, he was a supporter of Astra, a program of IISc for the application of science and technology to rural areas. His leadership qualities are one for all of us to emulate. He obtained great satisfaction and joy from the achievements of others, particularly students and subordinates, and they responded to his faith and trust. I think this faith and trust are most important for in any organization to work, and trust by achieving more than they would have otherwise. So this makes actually these people working in that organization great, and then they can come out with a lot of innovative ideas, and then the teamwork can be established with this. So that was he used to consider these aspects, and it was the confidence in those to whom he delegated responsibility that was the secret of his success in institution building, both at IISc and ISRO. So whatever his vision was there, he used to see that these responsibilities are delegated so that they can take care of and meet support in meeting the vision what he was envisaged. Today's lecture is being delivered by Dr. Y.S. Rajan, so Scientific Secretary, ISRO, and Professor S. Chandrashekar, Senior Scientist, ISRO. It is our privilege to have them to deliver the lecture on Professor Satish Dhawan, the Innovator Par Excellence. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. P.N. Tengli, sir, for your nice introduction about the program. Now I request our another convener, our Dr. Bino Prince, to introduce our two speakers of the program. Dr. Bino Prince, to go.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So, am I audible, sir?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. So, it's a great honor to be a part of the lecture, Professor Satish Dhawan sir lecture, and I'm very happy to be a part of this session because almost all legends are there in the session, and by the time many of my students also will be joining in another 5-10 minutes time because of the other schedule. So first of all, I would like to introduce about Dr. Y.S. Rajan sir. He served as an ex-scientific secretary and director of EOS ISRO. Dr. Y.S. Rajan sir has a proven record of excellence as a scientist, technologist, administrator, organization builder, and leader, diplomatic, academic writer, and poet. He combines a unique ability for original and innovative thinking with strong implementation skills. He has made key contribution to space research, technology, and innovation since 1964. As a scientific secretary, Indian Space Research Organization, he was responsible for a combination of scientific, technical, administrative planning policy, and international cooperation matters. He has worked with Massachusetts Institute of Technology, one of the top institutes in the world, USA, and also one of the uh, top research company, not company, industry, NASA, for about 3 years. He is also a well recognized authority and thought leader on technology development, business management, and society linkages. He has shaped key policies and implemented several successful R&D projects with industry participation. He has been responsible for creating a series of documents related to Technology Vision 2020 for India. After a 30-year stint with the Government of India, he joined the leading industry association in India, Confederation of India Industry (CIE) in 1996. At CIE, he strengthened and expanded the capabilities to the interface with government on S&T and business issues. As principal advisor from 2004 to 2020 for India, he created unique mechanism at CIE for university industry collaboration. So like this, I can able to read almost, I could able to see Sat's profile goes on almost for 2 3 4 pages. So because of the time constraint, so I would like to give a very brief introduction about Dr. Y.S. Rajan sir. Sir, we welcome you for the session, sir. Thank you for accepting the invitation.
Thank you.
And next,
Chandrashekar also has joined in. You can
yes, yes, sir. Next, I would like to welcome our next speaker, Professor Chandrashekar. So, Professor Chandrashekar is an honorary visiting professor at the National Institute of Advanced Studies. Prior to his stint at NIAS, he was a professor in the corporate strategy and policy area at the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. Before moving to IIM Bangalore, he spent more than 20 years working at the Indian Space Research Organization called ISRO. His work at ISRO covered all parts of the program, satellite, rockets, as well as the application of space technology, especially in the area of remote sensing. He was actively involved in with activities related to international cooperation, including with the well-known countries like US, Europe, and Russia. He has represented and led Indian delegation to the United Nations Committee to the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. His research interests at IIMB Bangalore include technology and competitive advantage, national technology priorities and policies, studies on innovation, telecommunication, national innovation system, modeling complex. It goes on counting. His recent publication include Space War and Security, a strategy for India, that has been translated into Chinese and China's space program from the era of Mao Zedong to Xi Jinping, published by Springer Nature. Even Sars, I can able to read his profile. It goes on very deep. So, with a small brief introduction, I would also welcome Professor Chandrashekar sir for the session. So, welcome you, sir. So, with this brief introduction, I'll hand over the session to sir. It is Dr. Sir Y.S. Rajan sir. It is over to you.
Thank you, Bino.
Dr. Bino Prince, sir. I think we'll waiting to listen to legend speakers, Dr. Y.S. Rajan and then Professor Chandrashekar. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Rangareddy, Dr. Pragalada, Dr. Binopal, and then there are doyens of Indian space program I can see, Vasagam, Aram Vasagam, Dr. Jayaraman, and many others. I can't name all of them now. And then it's a great pleasure. We are going to talk, Chandra and myself, Chandrashekar, I will often refer as Chandra as a colleague. We do it in ISRO. We will twin. First, I'm going to give a little introduction. And of course, I am not showing the first slide. The first slide describes what the talk is, which you have already explained. So I start. I thank the organizers for again selecting me for giving a 12th commemoration lecture about a great man, without whom the Indian space program would not have been what it is now, adding pride to the Indians internationally. He took over ISRO at its fledgling state, very energetic, but could become fragile if not handled and nourished carefully. That is the important part. I had the great honor of giving the first commemoration lecture, the start of the series. I had naturally emphasized the aspect of Prof Dhawan as an engineer. Natural, he has a multifaceted personality, as Dr. Tengli was pointing out, variety of it. I'm not talking about humanist and variety of other aspects, which I am very well aware of. But in that first one, aspect of as an engineer was good. Yes, he was an engineer par excellence. Not just in publications, but also in details of design and development, and also the nitty-gritty works relating to actual products. That marks the engineer. An engineer is one who creates products to the need of the user, or to fit an end use within the constraints of cost and schedules. Thus, design to product stages, an engineer has to make several compromises, but not sacrificing the core aspects of end use. As years pass by, we, Chandra and I am sure that many of my colleagues, ISRO colleagues who have worked with him, who are there listening, have found the unique capability of Prof Dhawan would not have sufficed to make ISRO what it is today. Our space program has reached the people in all walks of life. Telephones, TV, weather forecast.
Cherry.
I think somebody is talking. They can unmute, please. They can unmute and then talk. Cyclone warning, natural resource survey, forestry, water, agriculture, landslide estimate, oceans, almost A to Z. Not done by ISRO now, but actual users themselves, some of them are being done by commercial entities for end users. Not to mention the use of space for national security. Such a huge scale up would not come about only by engineer par excellence. Though engineering is the vital core element for it. Scale up to various walks of life would require another great skill, difficult to capture merely as a basic research or invention or patent and even a new engineered product. That is nowadays described as innovation. Yes, Professor Dhawan was an innovator par excellence. When the use of that word was not prevalent, even in the business management circles, I'm talking in 1970s, let alone the S&T organization. We, Chandra and I, are not just making another statement using the current popular jargon innovation, because nowadays people love to use the bandwagon effect. It is not that. This statement is based on 3 years of intensive research work done by Chandra, predominantly by him, and I assisted him, and I, about the state of ISRO when SD, sometimes I will mention as SD, that is as Satish Dhawan, entered the scene and what he did for 12 years, 1972 to 1984. We have found out many of his methods. The methods of working is to be found out, like case studies. And we have many examples, many. We'll run to somewhere about 70 to 100. We both have the benefit of working with Professor Dhawan for 10 years in that during his PN when he was there. Later also we were associated with him. So we know it in the ring side. Before we jump into giving examples at various levels, from hardware to policies to organizational management, let us give a glimpse of what is by innovation. Somebody who is talking may kindly unmute the.
Anju, you unmuted.
Professor Rajan, please unmute your. Professor, yes, sir.
All the while I was not muted. I was unmuted.
No, just a minute before. Still, it is mute.
Is doing it. I am not touching it also.
Now it's
Before, okay, please alert me when something happens there because I won't see the left side. Before we jump into the giving examples at various levels, from hardware to policies to organizational management, let us give a glimpse of what is meant by innovation. I think up to this, you would have heard me. There can be no better person than Chandra to explain it, as he is an authority on innovation and has taken for many years most popular courses in innovation in technology management and IIM in Bangalore, published many papers. Bino had explained it in some detail. He joined Professor Dhawan immediately after completing his BTech in IIT Madras. Then he went to IIM Cal. Then from there he joined straight to Professor Dhawan. When Professor Dhawan has started building ISRO headquarters, even though he took 1972, he's actually building up the ISRO headquarters. As you will see later, some of his mechanisms he started. Chandra has learned the process of innovation under Professor Dhawan, not realizing that many years later, he is going to be a professor of innovation in IIM. Now over to you, Chandra. Chandra, now you can take over.
Can everybody hear me? Yeah.
I am able to hear you.
Okay,
yes,
fine.
sir.
Okay.
We can hear.
So thank you, Rajan, for your very kind words. And it is an honor and a privilege to be here and share with all my fellow engineers some of our experiences that we went through in ISRO. we learned from a very great person, and it is a privilege to be able to share some of those learnings with a larger audience. And I would like to start by saying that the word innovation is one of the most misused words in the English language. A lot of people use it very, very superficially. And very often, even small changes that happen anywhere are characterized as what you call disruptive innovations. In the management world, we use the word disruptive quite a lot. So many of them are characterized by disruptive innovations, but they're actually very, very minor change. Okay. So there is no doubt that innovation is all about change. And we are worried about the nature of change. And the nature of change, in a sense, also reflects on the organization that is undergoing or wanting to undergo those changes. So the technology drive behind innovation is also coupled very often with organizational changes that have to be brought in if these changes have to make an impact, not only within the organization, but on society outside the organization. Can I have the next slide, please? If you look at the word innovation and you want to try and understand it in a little bit more nuanced way, you can look upon it as made up of two core ideas. All products and services have embedded within them a number of technologies, and those technologies have certain knowledge domains behind them. Now, the extent to which these knowledge domains change and the extent to which these affect the technologies and the products that embed these technologies is therefore one important element in looking at innovation. The second component is products and services are made up of arrangements of different technologies in order to deliver value to the customer. So the connections between the various components of the product or a service and the technologies behind those components and services also make an impact. Now, if you look at these two dimensions of, I would say, technology-enabled change or technology-enabled innovation, we can characterize the process of innovation as broadly 4 types of innovation. We can see the first of them is when the knowledge domains do not change, the underlying knowledge domains remain the same, and there is no major change in the way the components are put together, right? We can call such changes where the interconnections are not changing and the domains themselves remain the same. We can call such technological change as incremental innovations. The typical example of an incremental innovation is the replacement, for example, of the Pentium 1 PC that we all used at some time in the past with the Pentium 3. The fundamental knowledge domains, the fundamental interconnections, all of them remain the same. It's basically an improvement it's a minor improvement or a major improvement in capability, but no significant change in any of the underlying components or the way the components are put together in making the PC. So this is one kind of change. And a lot of incremental change obviously happens everywhere in every organization. So that's one part. The second part is where the underlying technologies are remaining the same and the connections, but however the connections between the technologies are different. The typical classical example that we can provide in order to characterize this kind of innovation is what is called architectural innovation. And if you go back and look at the early days of the evolution of the integrated circuit industry, and the photolithography equipment that was used to make those chips, right? You will find that all of them employ, right, electro-optics, fine mechanisms to move the stepper motor or the scanner in a particular way so that you can, etch the patterns that are required. All kinds of optical equipment, lenses, mirrors, in order to make sure that the patterns are properly captured and put on the silicon wafer that is going to be. So the photolithography, and if you go look back, a lot of Moore's law was made possible because of these advances, and they were all architectural advantages in the early days of the photolithography. So this is another example of change, technological change, and we can call those changes architectural innovation. The third component is where the underlying basis itself completely changed, right? And if you look at it, so you have what is called modular innovation, where the underlying, what I call the knowledge base itself is changed, or the way in which it is made is changed. And a typical example of modular changes, if you take an automobile and you replace the tire of the automobile with a different material or a different kind of thing, you would call that as modular change. The one part of the connected product or service is removed and replaced by a better performing product or service. I mean, that's the typical example of modular change. And the third is obviously where the underlying knowledge base is changing and the way the connections of the various technology components is also changing. And this is typified, for example, the transistor transition to the integrated circuit, completely different basis. And if you look at the transition from the mechanical watch to the quartz watch, you can see that it's also very significant. So these are typically, therefore, if you look at change and innovation, a more nuanced way to look at it would be to look at incremental innovation, see it as incremental, architectural, modular, or radical. Now, the real world is obviously, so these are kind of examples of what one can see. The real world is, of course, much more complicated, and maybe we can have varying combinations between these so-called idealized typologies that I'm talking about. But this is kind of important in order to assess or understand what we mean by innovation, because the process of innovation and what it brings about also has a direct impact on the organization and what it is. Can I have the next slide, please? This is very simple, just to illustrate that the difference between what I would call modular change. You can see that A is replaced by G in that conceptual framework. It's modular, everything else remains the same. Whereas architectural change, for example, is a complete replacement, right, of the connections themselves. Okay, so this is just to illustrate that these two types of change and the way they kind of affect the organization performing or involved in that change. Can I go to the next slide, please? Now, everybody associates innovation with invention, right? Now, obviously, innovation and invention are very different things. For an invention to become an innovation, it has to have a major social impact, or not major, it has to have a social impact. And therefore, unless it has that social impact, an invention will remain an invention. It will not become an innovation. So there is a part of a social process associated with innovation, and we have to be aware of that as people who talk about technology and change and invention and innovation. The other thing that you want to talk about it, not all innovations have to be based on technology. Now, I also have the privilege of having taught in a business school. Now, there are innovations in marketing, there are innovations in finance, there are innovations in the way organizations are put together. And sometimes when you do all these various shuffling of the various functional disciplines of management, you have business models that are quite innovative. Now, let me give you a few examples of those models. The Ford assembly line, when it first came online, revolutionized and transformed economy. It is a major innovation, which is architectural. Business models, okay. Walmart stores and the way they have become one of the largest companies in the world, if you go back and look at the structuring of what they do and the way they put together the various functional components of market of business, I would argue that it's a revolutionary way in which they did it. And everybody knows the Amazon.com model when it first came, and they sold these books through their website, and it was possibly the first time where the internet and all those things enabled a direct contact between the seller and the buyer. Okay, so it's a fantastic model. Coming back at home, there is I don't know whether any of you know about this fantastic organization called Arvind Eye Hospital. Their business model of trying to take eye care to the people, underprivileged people in rural areas, is one of the greatest success stories in India. Okay, and I would argue that it is possibly a revolutionary model that has not been done anywhere else in the world. And it's a fantastic model that has come out of the Indian ecosystem, which is really remarkable. Now, I would like to say that apart from all these organizational innovations and things that happen inside the organization, we can also have innovation at a national level or at a higher level of aggregation. Now, typical examples that I would like to draw is the Manhattan Project that was responsible for the atomic bomb, the Apollo program that was responsible for the landing on the moon, and more recently, if you look at the COVID vaccine development across the world and how they went about it, I would argue these are all major national level innovation programs. I would like to reiterate the point that what Dhawan did in ISRO, right, also had a significant impact at the national level. And therefore, some part of what he did, as my colleague Rajan will point out later, has to do with the fact that it had a major impact on the country as well. So these are the kind of broad categorizations that one would like to kind of look at. So you can therefore see that innovation can happen at several levels in a country. It can start at the unit level in a company, it can be at the company level, it can be at the industry level, it can be at the government level, and it can become the national level kind of change. So change can diffuse from the top to the bottom or from the bottom to the top. More often it diffuses from the bottom to the top. Okay. Not that the top decisions like the Manhattan Project or the Apollo program cannot have an impact. So it's a two-way process from top to bottom and from bottom to top. And that's the key part of what we are talking about when we look at process. Can I have the next slide, please? Now, this is a kind of, so this is extracted from a detailed study that we did on the innovation that took place in the IRS project. Okay, I'm not going to go into the details because Rajan is possibly more competent to do all of that in a much more what I call nuanced way than what I can. But the fundamental point I want to make here is innovation is a social process. Okay, and if you look at this slide a little bit carefully, you can see that there is a lot of people involved in the process of
training.
Can we please unmute? I think a lot of crosstalk is there. Okay. So you need a few roles to be played inside any organization for innovation to take place. I'd like to briefly touch upon these roles. You know, ideas are generated very often by people across all organizations, but most of the ideas come from working level people who are normally at the bottom of the hierarchy in many organizations. So you need a function that is called idea generators. Now, idea generators may be very creative. They have a lot of great ideas and all that. They need experimentation. They need to do a little bit of things in order to be able to show that it will work. But for them to do that, they need some level, some support at a higher level. Now, that support comes from another role that organizations have to play, and that is the role of what is called sponsorship. Sponsors are kind of middle level, right? They are more powerful. They have access to greater resources. They also are some kind of gatekeepers. They gatekeep between different parts of the system or between the organization and the outside world. They're gatekeepers also. So the sponsor gatekeeper combination is able to look at ideas and see whether they have the potential to be used anywhere else. And above the sponsors and the gatekeepers, you also need another function called the orchestrators. This is the benign, the top level people. I mean, Prof Dhawan was an example. There were many others in ISRO cutting across all our centers. So these are the people who want to look not only at what they are currently doing, but also worry a little bit about where we should be heading. And therefore, they have this view that we have to change in order to be able to make sure that we're able to meet the challenges that are emerging as we chug along on the normal route that we follow. And that is the third role that I would call orchestrators. Now, in order for innovation to happen, therefore, you need a process. You need a lot of people at the idea generation level. Now, many of them have ideas, but the ideas need a way in which they can be heard. So not only do you need a number of idea generators, but you also need sponsors. Now, what kinds of sponsors? Your boss could be your sponsor, but very often your boss is more interested in trying to make sure that the project deliverables are done. He's not so much worried about the future. So you also need access to other types of sponsors, right? So typically idea generators need to be connected to several sponsors through several routes in order to be able for the idea to be transformed into the next stage. And therefore, this process of connection between idea generators and sponsors, once you have them, they may be able to raise it, required resources to take it to the next step, and maybe they're also able to take it to the higher level and project a requirement, and therefore they are able to connect to the higher levels and the orchestrators. So this connection, multi-path connection through multiple routes between idea generators, between sponsors and orchestrators, sponsors, gatekeepers, and orchestrators, is kind of key to the way in which innovation can happen in any organization. Now, Dhawan's great contribution, according to me, if you look at this structure, it's got a formal underpinnings, right? There is a hierarchical structure within ISRO, and the deliverables are all done under these hierarchical structures. In other words, it's worried about the bread and butter, the routine activities. Dhawan's great contribution was to superpose on this hierarchical model, which is typical of all organizations, this innovation network, which is informal network. It's not about formal authority, but informal connections. And these informal connections are able to overcome a lot of the hierarchical problems that are associated with traditional organizations. And therefore, this is a kind of hybrid organization where it is not only able to do the routine tasks that it has to do, but it is also able to do the innovative tasks because of these innovation networks, which are largely social networks, connecting idea generators, sponsors, gatekeepers with orchestrators. So you can, so the greatness of Professor Dhawan, I'm giving you one part of the IRS network that happened. There were many other parts even in the IRS project. There are many others who would know more about it than I do, but that is just one part. What Professor Dhawan did was to create these innovation networks at all levels in ISRO, right? Starting from a unit, right, to a division. You could also look at a center. You could look at networks between centers. You could look at networks between centers and ISRO at a higher level. And Professor Dhawan also created networks of influence between ISRO as an entity, other government departments, and industry, right? And it went above governments and all that finally to deliver, value in the remote sensing value chain, or in the communication value chain, or even in the industrial development value chain. All of that was possible. I don't know whether any of you know a little bit about Roman mythology. Okay, there was this god, this Roman god called Janus. Janus is the Greek god, is the Roman god, and January is named after him. Now he is the Roman god of doorways and transitions. Okay, he has got two faces, one that looks at the past and one that looks at the future. Okay, and I would argue that the hybrid organization that Dhawan created was like Janus, right? It used the past, right, through the doorway and transitioned into the future, right? So ISRO had this great ability that not only was it very good at doing projects, it was also fantastic in looking at what is likely to happen, taking stock of what can be done and what cannot be done, and making the transition from idea, right, into innovation, right? And that involved a largely social process. And Dhawan's great contribution was he established, so these are like fractals. Innovation networks in ISRO were like fractals. They have the same, they are very similar in approach, but they occur at all levels. They occur across all centers, and they are also connected with each other in some form, right? And they are also connected through these various ways to higher levels and finally to the national level. I think this is the great contribution that Dhawan brought. Now, in order to lend flesh to some of these things that I'm talking about, these are more conceptual. There is no better person than Rajan, who worked possibly closest with Professor Dhawan than any of us. And he knew him intimately, he knew him very well. And, therefore, I hand it over to him to complete this talk. Thank you very much. It has been a privilege and an honor to address all of you.
Thank you, Chandra, for explaining innovation in some detail. What I will follow will be one facet of what Professor Dhawan has done, because everything we do, it will take about 10 hours, as many of you would know. So I would now give some glimpses of how Professor Dhawan made an all-round impact with innovations at several levels. All several levels, which Chandra has explained. Almost all of what Professor Chandrashekar explained about innovation. In a desire to innovate, he did not throw away incremental innovations. For him, innovation was not the end goal. It was the delivery of goods and services to the nation of what space can deliver, though at that time, all those benefits were potentially possible then. I would like all of you to think about the word potentially possible done. That is in 1970s and 80s, when Professor Dhawan was in charge of the space program. It is done. The most of them would not be. Some demonstrations were done in USA, but not to a full scale, and that too in situation at is it prevailed in India in 1970s, industrial or any one of it. As an engineer par excellence, he realized the role of incremental innovation. Sometimes, quite a few times he has told me, because some people will say we'll jump this and then go from this gyro to laser gyro, etc., etc. Rajan, people talk about leapfrogging. One can do it only in mind. But engineering is an assiduous process of building brick by brick. These are his words. He was also an academic. It's not that he was only doing this. He was also an academic, fascinated and what can be written in research papers. He has encouraged them. But when it came to delivery of ISRO as a productive organization for India, which can sustain large scale up relatively speedily, he was a practical engineer. That was his end goal for ISRO, reaching for everything. For this to happen, it was necessary for Professor Dhawan to be empowered adequately. If he is not empowered, then he can't do it. To do things the way he thought best. And there was no precedent for anybody to quote and slow, oh, this was done like that, do like this, etc. He had to observe, analyze, intuit, experiment, and occasionally take some bold, radical decision. Occasionally only, he said. Fortunately for India, though it lost the pioneer Dr. Vikram Sarabhai at a very young age, the powers that be boldly selected Professor Dhawan, who was on sabbatical at the Caltech of USA at the time of the sad demise of Vikram Sarabhai. Slide, please. Next slide. So, within a few days of Dr. Sarabhai's demise, Indira Gandhi, the then Prime Minister, took the decision to appoint SD as to head space. Also importantly, to decouple space from the tutelage of Department of Atomic Energy, the DAE, to make it separate department at the Space Commission. And above all, give authority to SD to shape the organization of DOS, Space Commission, the way he wants. This fact comes out clearly in the crisp and clear letter from Indira Gandhi to SD, delivered through the Indian ambassador, Sri Jha. It is almost January 6th or something like that. These facts come out from the research of Chandra and me. Many of the facts are compressed in this one slide. Very difficult to show everything, all that. Indira Gandhi and Vikram Sarabhai had family connections. Sarabhai had a few professional connections with SD for quite a few years and involved with him in interviews, in reviews, in COSPA, UN conferences, etc. But he never thought of it. All the thing comes out. He never thought of it as a successor or something. He was too young. So he was using him as his talent for all the technology and other things. Huxer was a close confidant of Indira Gandhi and knew some things of Professor Dhawan, not a close friend at that time. SD being a director of Indian Institute of Science, which had close connections with the Tatas, especially then JRD Tata, would have added some stature to SD. Between IG and Huxer, Indira Gandhi and Huxer, it has been decided to have SD. And IG realized, even in 1972, it comes out in her letter very clearly, the great potential of space technology. Hopefully, when the monograph of Chandra and me comes out on SD, one can see some details. Professor Dhawan was even allowed to continue, even at that stage itself, to continue as a director, which he insisted. They said, okay, you have it, and you can have your headquarters in Bangalore. Okay. The relations between Indira Gandhi and Huxer combined and SD grew stronger, and that was vital. Because innovation network of this such a thing is not easy. Huxer's insight, this is another very good interesting things which come into sociology of Indian administrative system, has helped SD to accept the need for Space Commission, Department of Space, and Chairman ISRO to be under the same person here, Professor Dhawan, though they had different distinct roles to play. So he was not, Professor Dhawan realized, having too much, everything together, he wanted to, Huxer told him, do it. So then he accepted it. These were the solid rocks and the foundations of the space program, which is needed to innovate. Because it's not enough. As Chandra pointed out, organization, technological and other things, a solid things from the top also is required. Though a lot of it has flow from it. It is worth mentioning here that Morarji Desai, who succeeded Indira Gandhi briefly in 1977-79, realized the importance of these three posts being held by the one and the same person. Though he, as a PM, insisted one man, one post for everybody else. He made many people to choose and get out. That would have been because Morarji Desai's judgment about the speciality of a person, of Professor Dhawan, who did not make these three posts being together into an autocratic field. I'm telling it with full responsibility, which would be a normal human tendency. Professor Dhawan was deeply aware of this trap, which he could get into, and thus created a system of formal and informal structures which can counterbalance the single point failures, even at his level of holding three powerful positions. Next slide, please. Next slide. This is where Chandra briefly touched upon how the thing is. So I'm going to explain it a little bit. It will be very difficult. This will require another about 20 minutes to explain, but I am not going to do it. Space Commission is the apex body with policy making and also some approval, not all, some approval financial decisions, normally not done by departments. In that sense, it has some partial powers of a minister in the Indian system. But it consists of powerful members of the Indian bureaucracy, cabinet secretary, principal secretary to PM, finance member. But finance member has the powers. Chairman can overrule all, but finance member has powers to differ from chairman to block some project proposal related to finance. Hardly ever used as check and balances worked informally. The commission, you see the informal structure and the formal structures in this. This commission role wasn't there atomic energy too. Somebody may say, what is the difference? But what was done by SD was not the mere architectural innovation, just to make it ISRO, etc., etc. But below that thing, he created the DOS link. He created for the technical executives all the powers which the department had were delegated to those centers. You see on the right hand side, VSSC, SAC, they are the two centers. Then later some centers were added. So they had all the power. The directors had all the powers which are delegatable. There are certain things cannot be given there. Then he created also a self-contained rules, and this is not enough to create and then you gave the power. A self-contained rules and procedures avoiding needlessly inelastic rule or for the government rules. It's not that. It is within the structure of the government, but needlessly inelastic rules were without it. It was formulated, and their documents were openly available. It is not somebody who you come and find out from DOS. It is not that. So that everybody will know their powers and their limits at the various level, even in the projects level, CHAR, ISSB, SLB, etc. Also having the position of chairman ISRO, having a chairman ISRO, which makes, and then with the ISRO council, creating an ISRO council, this is a quasi-radical innovation to avoid center directors and the project executive to report to DOS. Otherwise, they will all be reporting there to the Space Commission. So, to the Department of Space. To report, the main role was ensuring the compliance of Department of Space is very important. It has the main role of compliance of government system of public accountability. In the process of ISRO Council, chairman also, to make things actually happen, created an ISRO HQ. Then this will be, they will meet and go. So he created the ISRO HQ, which was a radical innovation. It was not there in any organizations before. He also, not even in atomic energy. He also created a position of scientific secretary ISRO in the process. These are radical organizational innovations. These are there are many cases history we can present how the new system of ISRO HQ played a vital role in SD's implementation of innovation at various levels. The position of scientific secretary ISRO, additional secretary and joint secretary fulfill the desire to these. They are all sitting in headquarters, that is ISRO HQ and DOI secretary. They're all sitting there. Fulfill the SD's need to create the troika, which can do the functions of checks and balances. He would like to see to ensure that this peace holding of three positions together does not go astray with ad hoc autocracy. So unless these people agree and then come to something, he was not touching it. Though he was aware of things. He had explained this once to me when he told me as to the role of scientific secretary. Want to be very elaborately, sometimes a little bit. I held not an easy job. Scientific secretary ISRO, many think that at least when he was doing it, it was not an easy job for a young man. I was in the early 30s, dealing with experienced and powerful joint secretary, additional secretary, and center directors. They will all be somewhere close to 50. I did not end. It did not end. This good thing did not end up in making one person scientific secretary. That's not enough. It would have then it will get into some other type of things. So it would need some domain experts, people will understand, be able to get in young persons who can feed Chairman ISRO with the different analysis, optional scenarios, also importantly, links with working levels of ISRO. He showed one thing in the side, but I will show something there. There will be continuous link from the bottom as well as from the top. It was not a mere paper pushing. This may be somebody writes a paper pushing organization. Somebody may say in secretariats they write notes, but it is not a paper pushing organization, nor a spy system looking at things in the centers and quietly filling the ears of Chairman ISRO. It was an open system. When a young analyst in ISRO headquarters makes a critical analysis of the technical progress or budgetary requirements, these were open documents available to all center directors and others there as well. See, therefore, the formal connection, the more of informal links in the diagram. In a later slide, I will show the integrate. Oh God, you are having all this. How will they integrate? One example I will show. Before that, I will talk about one of the radical innovation which came about due to such analytical, consultative, argued about process. Analytical, consultative, and all will be what the thing they will eat. Will tell, oh, your analysis, this is wrong there, etc., etc. The processes for the Indian remote sensing program. One I will show for that. The person who spearheaded was Chandrashekar. That is going to be at a bottom level innovation. Chandrashekar sitting at ISRO headquarters and consulting many others. It was not an easy path. Yeah. Please, cross-link, cross-talking, please. Put off your, unmute yourself and then talk. It was not an easy path. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. Now, this is technology innovation. Technologies don't stay idle. You all know it. You are all engineers and technologies. You have done so many things. The innovations, incremental, etc., shown before lead to radical. Not all, but a cumulative process does it. Changes over a few years curves, which many of you will be aware of. From TV cameras in the 70s, TV cameras, then VHRR to CCD. See their level of this thing in that 100 meter, then 20 meter to 1 meter, etc., etc. Though TVs were obsolete, this again one has to note, those TVs were obsolete when we took up Bhaskara satellite, that is 1975 post. It was used to noting the constraints of a spinning Aryabhatta platform, but importantly to get experience for ISRO's engineers. It was taken. Is again Dhawan, a little bit old, but let us learn. When IRS satellite was planned in the late 70s and early 80s, naturally the design was VHRR. It was in the thick of it. Was done Landsat satellites. It was all Landsat. It was contemporary done. See the second curve, which is there, the blue one. See, then VHRR was a tough nut to crack. Several technological complexities, cooling system, lubricants, mounting of the imaging mirrors had such a low RMS errors. But we had a little option. It is a tough thing. Okay, we have to go through what to do. It is then Chandra looked at new developments. It's all going on. Project has been approved and started. It was CCD, promising but not used by anybody else in space. He and George Joseph, you are seen in the earlier thing, the sensors, you are seen George Joseph, his division. That is why that informal link comes. He and George Joseph team in SAT did a lot of details. What are the details? There are so many things to be asked. Can we use? Can we procure? Cost? Note that in those days, procurement was not easy. Many of these things may be banned also. Cost? Can we experiment? Yes, we can go this untrodden route, some untrodden route, some risk, but several advantages, including better resolution. You see, better resolution can go 1 meter or something like that, but maybe even if we give 20 is good. Should we not do some experiments for the imaging before the radical decision is taken? Because one cannot just jump in and then say, I'm falling. Abandoning before a decision of abandoning the VHRR, which has been already approved in the Space Commission project. So government this is actually a cabinet decision. So Chandra, being at headquarters, devised a clever method of you have to experiment. Already not budgeted, but it can be done. Giving clever method of giving a budget without violating the government rules. And CJ took that made George Joseph to conduct a few flights. With the ISRO made aerial flights, not space flight. Conduct a CCD camera. It was promising. It was over a period of 2 years. It was not just done, come on, do it tomorrow. The project or centers were not enthusiastic initially. Arey Baba, what is changed and other thing? But it was not a main thing for them. So as he told the Jana space was stuck that other one, but it was also looking at the future, what it will be. The project for centers were not enthusiastic initially. Finally, a decision was taken to abandon VHRR route for IRS and go to CCD. This was done by Dhawan. Later we will report and then we will make the modification. This is a radical decision. It made ISRO one of the early providers of high-resolution space imagery globally. There are many other examples in the launch vehicle area as well. If I start telling them, I have not listed them. We make similar pictures. Actually, Vasagam is there, the doyen of the India's launch vehicle program. He will list at least some 10, 20, even show example, there may be 100. This radical decision at component level led to several other radical opportunities. I'm telling about the CCD. Radical opportunities for users, EOS program to benefit from the Indian resource survey, at the national level. Next slide, please. No, there I said one example of a take place at component level. Earlier, you have seen the structure where the innovation network at the level of centers. Again, we are showing around in the IRS only because easier to put in that. I would like to mention a slide about the space communication innovation network and the structures behind it, quasi-radical. Then I mentioned about we mentioned integrating mechanisms were there. The top structures are crucial right from the confidence of the PM to the top administrators. But the system cannot deliver if the right networks which integrate. Okay, you have made a structure, do it. Yes, informal, but it has to integrate, deliver which integrate many different activities of the technical at the technical executive levels. Remember, ISRO's task is an R&D organization. It is not just going and doing repeat something. Even in the other organizations, there will be integration needed. Maybe little less. Remember, ISRO task is R&D with D as a development as a key work, and the development cannot be at a demo level and have to reach users as well. Users have to be prepared well in advance. Not enough that ISRO did it and then launch. One example that I've given of IRS is given here. It is also for the launch vehicle products, inside satellites, etc. There will be another world in itself. The simplicity, even in this, 2-3 components have not shown. For simplicity, the ground tracking and data reception activities are not shown. NRSA, ISTRAC and all will come there. Jairaman is there. He will know how it is very important there. Tracking satellite involves coordination with the foreign countries station as well. Those things are there. See under the, now I am going to talk only under this. You see this it was same what was shown before. Formal network and the informal network. See under the thing, what is the integrating mechanism? See under the bottom of the slide, things are study teams, projects, budget reviews, plan preparation, area reviews, discipline reviews, user presentation, seminar, workshops. All these will take place in a very complex form. And also see, importantly, I'm going to only highlight one important point. There is a thing, you see, the person named Baldev Sahai is written and application. Earlier I told about George Joseph, it was census, but that's all inside. Application, you know, this Baldev Sahai and then the whole group, they were not space engineers or space technologies or space scientists. They were from agriculture, forestry, working with users and creating confidence. They are all also different disciplines. They will also be a lot of things they have to understand between themselves also, and creating confidence in the use of satellite imagery and also giving feedback to the data product group. They will also do it, and then they will also interact with the NRSA, etc. Next slide, please. Further down, this is at a center director level, project level. Further down, there is also a network which is necessary. Multiple directors. Chandra just hinted at that there are multiple centers, multiple directors will come. They also need to be integrated. There, it is done not at ISRO Council level because that will be too much to bring it all there. At the operating level, below the centers, the project is running. In that program management council, you see Director ISAC, Director SAC, and Director NRSA. They are all there and they are all together. They meet very often. Then there is a program director. This is at the center level. There is don't confuse it with the ISRO headquarters program. Here, when there were multiple projects, where there are more projects, they were doing earlier one project, one project director. Enough. Now here 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4 satellites are there. But each project has got a project management board, so that they are not constrained, because then everything you have to come to the program director, it will get constrained. Therefore, further down, the project management board had most of the powers to do most of the work. Then there are also people distinctly, directors, so that they can take decisions at their level. various of what they can do, if it is consigned or DPTs and etc. I'm not elaborating on that. So there are more than one journey. We develop this without constraining the actual work. At the same time, having a reviews and all that thing together and the focused decision making. This type of organization innovations were non-existent in India. We can tell with some boldness, because I have seen other organizations also. These were creations of Professor Dhawan through learning process. He didn't just say, oh, I got Asman se aaya farishta. It was not that. He was, we can see so much of examples. Why we are making this statement is, he learned a learning process starting from Aryabhatta to SLV3 and Apple. Apple, we can talk. Actually, you should all request Aram Vasagam to give how that is a thing where multiple directors, multiple technologies, so many things will be there. It will be a couple of hours of talk by Aram Vasagam. You ask him, which was a unique sense of coupling satellite technology and launch vehicle technology of ISRO. SLV project was going on, still going on, the developmental stage. From that was pushed into satellite, and to make it is not like Aryabhat. This one was a 3-axis stabilized satellite. Yeah, necessary, without which IRS would have been difficult. This was the first geosynchronous satellite, which was not at all foreseen in 1972 decade profile of Dr. Vikram Sarabhai. Again, a bold decision. It is necessary, do it, and then those cross linkages were there. So you should know that. Keep looking at many of them. Make our Vasagam to talk about it sometime. It also did some applications. That this one, Andhra flood and all. Now, after all this innovation, you are talking organization. Proof of the pudding is in the eating. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. This is the first image from IRS. You see it, how good it is. IRS one day, the first after Apple, 3x other the low earth was IRS. Next one, it is over India. Next one, see the details of IRS 1C. One way was that there you saw of the mall in Washington, DC. Civilian satellite, best resolution between 1995 to 2000. So this is what it is. At one point, Indian remote sensing satellite was the sole supplier of remote sensing imagery to the world as one of the satellite which NASA had been, unfortunately, it failed. So that period, NRSA was the sole supplier for it, received by this thing, IRS. We can see similar successes in the field of launch vehicle too, with PSLV launching foreign satellites on a commercial basis, and GSLV landing Chandrayaan, which can also launch foreign one. In the launch vehicle area too, things are very, very complex, and SD's contribution are many, be it in the use of Maraging steel or going for the Vikas liquid engine project as a fine collaboration. There is a very beautiful talk during the process of research. I had a very detailed talk with Vasakam. His studies, SLV SIM, which was presented to the Space Commission August 1973, 1 year after Professor Dhawan, even earlier than that. In that, there are several ones. They took a very vital decision of going for Vikas engine, which was not there in the profile. Also, such a big structure of SLV3, that is a solid propellant launch. So this was also taken. These are all, those were radical breakthroughs in the launch vehicle area, which is very necessary. The same with INSAT. It started with a foreign procurement satellite, then indigenous, it went to indigenous INSAT, supplying services, most private sectors too, and government application. Today, you would have seen the papers that ISRO has transferred already many satellites to NSIL, so that it is commercial arm, so that they are going to do a lot of selling of that. It was all through the innovation at work, not getting into the same groove after one breakthrough, but keeping incremental innovations alive and making them a radical shifts. when opportune. Radical shift when opportune. It is not that, very often, once it's success, I say, we will continue the same path. No, it is not in the same groove. It is going, there are several examples. We are not just making then sudden radical shifts also. A systematic recording of the contribution of SD to innovative steps in ISRO during his 1972-84 period would run to a good-sized book and may be useful for coursework in the Institute of Technologies and Management. Some of what Chandra and I have done may give some glimpses when the monograph is hopefully published. So far, we have touched upon the innovators at the space organization, technologies, projects, and related to them. Up to that, mostly within that, though of course some users I had mentioned. Of course, we touched upon the benefits derived from them in all India scale, and a few of them even at a world scale. Real scale up of such an extent was possible only because the innovation of new mechanism created by SD to hope in all the users and stakeholders. He said beyond the government, beyond the structures, to list a few of them very, very briefly. They are industries who are the vendors of ISRO, who thus took away bulk of the routine load and also prepare themselves over a longer term to supply to space services. This he did it because with this, which is now happening, that they are themselves, many of them say, we do it. Yes, Professor Dhawan got Space Commission to issue the policy of using industry, public and private, and also SMEs. In 1975 itself, there is a declared policy. So people have to do. ISRO people were a little reluctant, but they had to do it. For telecom, TV, and meteorological services, which are controlled. Then second type of this one, first was industries, then telecom, TV, and meteorological services, which are controlled by one department or one ministry. He created an INSAT coordination committee, not just an advisory or consultative committee, but an empowered committee, because he had talked even in August 72, the seminar. Everything cannot be department. We have to spread it, means we need all of them. So for TV channel utilization and everything, and including web services. He thus created a new, and also before getting into INSAT itself, he created a project called STEP. I'm not listing everything because it would be too much. And it was not again thought of in profile, only site. Then they were going to INSAT. Here it was a Franco-German satellite utilizing and then make a project director of telecom department. In those days, it used to be called P&T. And that step also was necessary to create user confidence. More complex it was when it came to remote sensing data utilization. There are many central ministries, literally A to Z, and many subjects, also many subjects like agriculture, forestry, water also were the domain of state governments and in our federal structure, though the union ministries can help a little bit. SD started a set up a state remote sensing centers as well before IRS went up. And before that, he has also got NRSA, which was not under Department of Space. He has not started it. He got it put inside DOS. Jairaman will know how much the type of users, very good users, and then what all they will require. And also he knows about the state remote sensing units, which NRSA will help. These were not ISRO units. Please note, ST wanted the states to own them, to fund for it, but they invested a part of capital. ISRO invested a part of capital. Later, the states also have to put a little bit. Later, they ran it themselves. All states covered, and ISRO and NRSA were giving technical advice gratis. Jairaman would have done to many of them. They would have made them when a new technology comes, they will have helped it. These centers also participated in IRS utilization program to train human resources for the use of remote sensing. Many of them excelled since the computers were costly at that time, not easily available. Few regional remote sensing services centers also were set up as a part of consultation. Central ministries, they funded it. All these contributed to settling out of the National Natural Resource Management System with the DOS as responsible. Government made a special, very rare alteration to rules of, they don't change it at all. Changes to place NNRMS under DOS. This was done with the full support of central ministries and departments, which usually jealously guard this system at the level of achievement of use of remote sensing inexpensively. That is something you should ask Jayaraman to talk about sometime. He has seen right from IRS onwards to upward, led to special issue of a combined international journal of remote sensing at their invitation. NNRMS is a unique, innovative setup by Dhawan, using all the 4 types of innovations what he has shown. And I don't want to expand the list further. You can now. I am ready to go for Q&A now. I should make a personal remark. I personally benefited using many of these SD techniques, even though it was not formulated in this way. It was internalized by me. To the success of TIFAC, I left ISRO 1998, where I did start many of these multiple users, my SMEs to this one to that one, users from leather to steel. You will know, when you know TIFAC means there was a Vision 2020. TIFAC is much more than that. TIFAC did much more, and then you will find each one of them I can delineate. I think I will request Chandra to do that research later. You'll see Professor Dhawan's method of footprints there. And even though he was not at all involved there, so much has got internalized, I think I would have done something, learned something. The listeners would have by now, we hope, would have realized why we wanted to describe Professor Dhawan as an innovator par excellence, the first slide what you saw. Thanks again to the organizers and to the listeners. Now Q&A. Thank you. I am through.
Thank you, Professor Rajan sir and Professor Chandrashekar sir. I think we will take 2-3 questions, 5:45. So over to listeners. Any questions to the speakers, please? You can unmute and you can ask.
Yeah, this good evening. This is Vasagam. Anyway, very nice presentation has already been done. But I think the 2 things in the introductory remarks, which was made about the human face of Professor Dhawan, he also had the passion for the bird flight. You know, that was one of his passion. And he got the fellowship of the Royal Aeronautical Society for the pioneering work that he did. That is the muscle power with the wings, of the birds, how they are doing transcontinental flights also. So that is one aspect. And the second thing is he was stickler to rules, as he rightly said, that everything is taxpayers' money, every single pie we are accountable. So no government of India rule can be broken. You have to live with it, but you have to also deliver. That is, I think, these 2 are very important things. I think the system that has been described here, that is taken care of that kind of thing. So in the CAG reports, in the government parliament when it is submitted, it used to be some, at the most 1 paragraph or 2 paragraphs maximum out of 600-page kind of documents. So I think you must see how the administrative setup and the interfacing of the ministries and the finance and many others we have taken care of. Anyway, all the best, I think, today, because tomorrow, I think the first sounding rocket, commemoration event is taking place at Trivandrum. So I think this is a very nice occasion to have the memory of Prof Dhawan commemorated today through this lecture. Thank you.
Thanks, Vasagam.
Sir, I am B.S. Prabhakara, sir, from Mysore. Sir, just above this slide, which you are showing now, what is that one, sir? First image. Could you kindly show it?
IRS 1C satellite. It takes lot of imagery all over the world and India. You have just shown one to the level of detail. You see, you take a Washington DC map and then see this. You will find all of them.
Okay.
To that level, we wanted to show that how that going to CCD and continual improvement of that in the IRS satellite, we were able to achieve the, see, bottom there is a civilian satellite with the best resolution between 1995 to 2000 was Indian remote. That is from an ordinary thing level, we have go to world class. That is just to show that illustration. There are many more. When you make Jayaraman to talk about it, then he will talk about all imageries. He will show so many imageries. Okay. On Vasakam's comment, I got only one this thing. Yes, bird flight is there. Then there are, I also didn't touch about things like these things were Yanadi tribes, how it was taken care of, how the eucalyptus trees and other things, not cutting trees as much as possible. Even when a radar to be done, normally the thing will be cut everything, so that the radar view will be there. So everybody used to be very careful in that. So quite a few of many of that is the human aspects of many of it. Things of nature. He was a nature lover, plant lover, tree lover. All those things were there, in which you could do post-retirement. This bird flight also he did. But this bird flight accumulated a data over one Sita Raman. He used to collect all, the fellow will go down and then take Hasselblad camera. Of course, as he said, Vasakam said about stickler to rule, he got permission of ISRO to use those pictures. Because it was all ISRO's depository. People won't know why this old man has asked so many of these photographs, but he sat later to do it. And as Vasakam pointed out, one of the very important thing of person, that is why I was going on telling he was against putting all the powers in his hand, because a tendency will be to break something. So he was very much, it is people's money governed by a constitutional system. We have to obey. That's why I used to stress very importantly, public accountability is very important. You can't say innovation, I will throw away everything. No, he did that all within that system, created systems which can do that. And then people did understand. Vasakam can, when he says he will know, there are things which are changed. For even in Apple program, there are certain things when the budget were escalating, certain things were dropped and other things, how they did it. There will be no para against what they did. Wrong. We all, our government servants, will be very worried about the CAG para. We never had any para. And then another thing was, he was not only through the rules and other thing, he was very importantly, he was very clear that the people should know, people of the country should know. Every 6 months, he arranged for press people to go, media to go. He will not go and even tell them, go and talk like this. Because I know I handled many of them. He won't even suggest to them what to write. Because he said, people should know. They will do this thing. So this type of public accountability, open, transparent, barring a few things like a state related secrets, which you have to keep. Other than that, you was transparent. You want a system to be transparent. So it's something very great. But even now, it's not simply a thing of past. That's the reason why we presented this. It is from this, when some of the details are seen, these things can be used, transplanted, of course, in the modern context, in the not modern context, in the contemporary context, it can be used by many organizations, not just space alone. That is something, is the innovator only can scale up and then reach. And he has been successful in the sense that he has left behind an organization which has gone through several mutations and things like that, but still it holds well. That's the thing.
Thank you. Last question, Professor Rajan. Sir, if anybody is having question, this is the last question, then we'll go for a
I have one add-on. I'm Dr. Jayaraman here.
Yeah, please.
Can I please add?
Yes, please, Jayaraman.
Dr. Rajan and Chandrashekar, it was a nice talk by you, consolidated what all happened for 30, 40 years back in ISRO. Of course, I thought you should mention about system engineering component, which Professor Dhawan brought a big follow in ISRO, as well as the matrix management structure what he brought in. And these two are the ones which are really making sure that all the facilities are centralized but made use of by the system effectively. And of course, there was a question on the satellite imagery. I thought I will add something there. You know, remember 1972 was the first satellite, Landsat 1, ERTS went up. We launched our satellite IRS-1A in 1989, 17 years later. At that particular point in time, we were only a novice in that remote sensing. Within 5 years, 6 years, India became the topmost high resolution satellite maker in the world. Okay, that is, I think, I remember when I went to Professor Dhawan's house in 1999 with the TES satellite data output, 1 meter data. He told me, Jayaraman, do you remember 1979 we had a 1 kilometer resolution. 1 kilometer resolution. 1999 we made it 1 meter. 20 years, 1 kilometer to 1 meter. He was so happy on that day. I remember that 1999. So I think we think of Professor Dhawan, he brought us that value system, that technology is not for technology, it is for the application, it is for the users, it is for the country, it is for the nation. So that was the greatest lesson he taught us. ISRO is trying to follow even today. And that is the integrated system we made thanks to Rajan and Chandrashekar sort of people there in headquarters there, Professor Dhawan. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I have one question.
I think what Srivastava wants to ask question.
Thank you, sir.
I hope you will
just one common man question. Professor Rajan, it has been a fantastic presentation. I salute you. I also have the best nostalgia of personally experiencing when Professor U.R. Rao was the convocation chief in BHU. I'm an engineering graduate of BHU IT. Now they call it IIT. So ISRO is there in my heart and mind in multiple ways. And when I was working at CMPDI, which is the Coal India Consulting one, we have used IRS tools for many of the coal field imagery. My question, late Dr. Abdul Kalam also exposed this technology for understanding underground fire of Jharia coal field.
Yes.
I was fortunate enough to be involved. So I have a little bit of appreciation, very humble understanding. But my question is a very different one. And that just one question. The way you are showing the view of the Mall of Washington State or Washington, DC downtown, has any politicians or political constituency or any MP in the area has ever utilized this technology for understanding meticulously about their constitutional geographical reasons and then control not just one time to win election, but also 5 years to monitor and propel growth pattern? That's it.
Okay, on this I am not elaborating now because of the time constraint.
Okay, thanks.
There have been a few politicians who have used it.
Okay.
But that is why I said when Jayaraman has to present, there he will be able to tell. There are people who are aware who use it and then do this thing. There have been NGOs who have been using it. There are quite a few of them. So I won't touch more on that. But it could be done a lot more. Ye dil mange more. That's all what we are. But it can be done more. One thing which Jayaraman has added, system engineering, we didn't put each one of them because the system engineering, the word when we have to use, again, like Chandra has to put one slide and then show it. Because as you are aware of, many people will, know what is system engineering. But many people will think system analysis means one computer and then put some pictures. This one is again a very cross-linked metrics management system, but metrics management with our this one, etc., that will take time. Therefore, we are not added. Anyway, good that you mentioned it. I hope that will also go in the record so that people will know. Thank you, Jayaraman.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'll contact Professor Jayaraman.
Yeah,
thank you.
Contact Professor Jayaraman.
I'd like to add just one point.
Yes.
The matrix management structure that Vijay is talking about, in my opinion, is replaced in modern management jargon by a network structure, And a network structure cuts across horizontal as well as vertical dimensions, as well as geography. Okay. So the standard terminology today to recapture what Dhawan did is a network organization, not a matrix organization. So a social network is the way to look at organization structure today.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor Vice Rajan, Professor Chandrashekar, sir, and Dr. V. Jayaraman. And before we close the meeting, I request Dr. T.V. Govindaraj to propose a formal vote of thanks for this program, Professor Satish Dhawan Commemoration Lecture. Dr. T.V. Govindaraj, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. M.T. Rangareddy, the Secretary, IEA Karnataka State Center. I am very much thankful for organizing this talk on Professor Dhawan, the Innovator Par Excellence. And you have chosen really the very good speakers, which they have really enlightened all of us. And more than 40 plus people were attended this, and they have been enlightened with the information given by both the speakers. And I should be very thankful for the Chandrashekar and also the Professor Rajan, especially for giving some information about how these technological innovations are happened. So one of the slide which was really fascinating me to is the cross play, which is converted into radial tires. So a lot of innovations have taken place in between that. So that is a very good example how the innovations are going to take place. Another example he has given is a transistor to IC. It has given a radical innovations. So now initially the transistors, when they were very bulky. When it has come to the IC level, it has become so small. Now, of course, we can give a lot of examples on that, how the innovations have been taken place. Even the Pentium 1 to Pentium 3, which is called as incremental innovations, and photolithography, architectural innovations. You see, these are the different categories of innovations. They have clearly explained to the audience. And really, this kind of innovation technology or the idea generation should reach to the academics. And we have a lot of the students, and also Professor Vasagam is guiding so many institutions to launch these satellites. They are making 75 satellites programs through organization. And really, this is a wonderful talk given by the speakers. And also, I should be very thankful for organizing this by the Institute of Engineers, and also the convener and co-convener and the chairman and secretary. And really, the Professor Rajan, I am very enlightened by the information you have given to us. And really, we need, this should reach to the academics, the students, young generation, young minds. And they are the people who can give the new ideas can be converted into innovations. So invention is, of course, yes, even Professor Chandrashekar has given what the innovation and inventions. So these things, really the students should have it in their mind. So once if this is reached to the institution level, I think really a lot of innovations can take place, which definitely reach to the common people. And ISRO, of course, everybody knows, the whole world knows about ISRO. And whatever the innovations have taken place, it has reached to the common public. So that is very important. A common public, if it reaches any innovations, really the work what the scientists and people like you have done, it will be very, very, very useful to them. So I should be very thankful for both the speakers for giving a wonderful information during this, of course, especially on the Professor Satish Dhawan Innovator Par Excellence. Thank you very much for organizing IAI for a wonderful talk by these two eminent personalities. And I should be very grateful for listening to these two speakers. Thank you very much, sir. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you, Govindaraj, sir. Thank you for all professors, Rajan, Professor Chandrashekar, all the conveners, attendees, and all the people who have taken a time almost for 1.5 hours. Thank you very much. And we'll again request maybe you to join for other next programs whenever next December 6th we are conducting. We'll send invitation for all those who are participating today program. Thank you all. Again, special thanks to Professor Rajan and Professor Chandrashekar, Tengli, Govindarajulu, and Bino Prince. Thanks a lot.
Thank
We
you,
are
sir.
closing the meeting. Thank you. Manju, close the meeting.
Thank you, sir.
Shall I leave? I'm going to leave.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. All
Thank
are
you.
leaving. We are closing the meeting, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Leave.
Manjunath, you can